You ever notice how exhausting it is just being around people? Like, you get home and you literally need 3 hours of silence just to feel like yourself again? Yeah, there's actual neuroscience behind that. And if you're someone who'd rather be alone than deal with shallow conversations and fake energy, this one's completely for you. Society loves to tell us that having no friends means something's wrong with us. But here's what researchers at UC Santa Cruz discovered. The psychology of chosen solitude reveals something completely different. When you choose to be alone, it's not isolation, it's not depression. It's actually linked to higher self-awareness, better emotional regulation, and stronger identity development. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people don't understand the difference between being lonely and choosing solitude. One destroys you, the other builds you. Let me break this down. I've heard so many people say this exact thing. I only want friends who are better than me and push me to progress. Can you relate to that? Because when you value depth over small talk, most social interactions feel completely pointless. You're not avoiding connection, you're avoiding the wrong connection. And psychologists actually have a name for this. It's called selective social orientation. You'd rather have 2 real conversations than 50 fake ones. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Your brain is literally wired differently. Research shows that introverts and people who prefer solitude have higher sensitivity to dopamine. That's the neurotransmitter that controls reward and pleasure in your brain. Too much social stimulation floods your system with dopamine, and instead of feeling energized like extroverts do, you feel completely overwhelmed. Your brain goes into overstimulation mode. That's why after just 3 hours of socializing, some people experience what psychologists call social exhaustion or an introvert hangover. Someone once shared this and it hit different. After coming home from school, I take a nap instead of going outside to play because of overexhaustion. That's not laziness, that's your brain doing deep psychological processing that others don't even know exists. You're processing conversations, body language, emotional exchanges, tone, subtext, everything. While everyone else is moving on, your mind is still working, and that takes energy. But here's where the psychology gets darker. A lot of people with no friends aren't there by accident. They're there because of betrayal. I've heard people describe it like this. I let my friends and family go after 30 years realizing I was just a people pleaser and everyone was happy taking from me. Once I offered nothing, they all showed their true colors. Has that ever happened to you? When you realize people only showed up when they needed something? Drop a comment if you've experienced this, because you're definitely not alone. That's when your entire psychology shifts. You develop what researchers call a high trust threshold. You don't hate people, you just refuse to tolerate users, liars, and energy vampires. Your standards get higher, and honestly, that's not a problem. That's called psychological growth. You're protecting your peace, and that's not cold, that's intelligent. And now here's the part that changes everything. People who embrace solitude develop something extremely rare: intense self-reflection skills. When you're not constantly distracted by drama, gossip, and performing for others, you actually get to know yourself. You start analyzing patterns. You notice things others completely miss. You think deeply. I've heard many people say this. Having no friends allowed me to become more aware of my surroundings and quite good at observing people. That's not loneliness, that's clarity. That's emotional intelligence most people will never develop because they're too busy chasing external validation. Research from the University of Reading found that solitude actually increases what they call authentic self-expression. You become more yourself when you're alone because there's no social pressure to perform. Quick question for you. Do you feel more like yourself when you're alone or when you're around people? Be honest with yourself on that one. Here's what the research confirms. Chosen solitude, when it's your preference and not forced on you, has 0 negative effects on your mental health. 0. In fact, studies show it improves creativity, reduces stress, lowers anxiety, and increases autonomy. But the key word is chosen. When you're alone because you want to be, your brain produces acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that triggers pleasure from internal reflection rather than external stimulation. That's why reading, thinking, creating, and just existing in silence feels so good to you. But society is completely biased towards extroversion. One psychologist put it perfectly. When we see any sign of introversion in children, we worry they won't be popular, but we overlook plenty of well-adjusted people who are perfectly happy when alone and who benefit from their solitude. So if you're watching this thinking, finally, someone actually gets it, yeah, I see you. The psychology of chosen solitude isn't about being broken. It's about refusing to settle for connections that drain you instead of fulfill you. Maybe you don't need more friends. Maybe you just need better ones. Or maybe you're perfectly fine exactly as you are. One last thing, if you've ever felt guilty about wanting to be alone or if people have made you feel like something's wrong with you, just remember this. Researchers found that people who spend time in solitude score higher on measures of self-acceptance, personal growth, and life purpose. You're not missing out. You're tuning in to yourself, to your values, to the life only you can create. Drop a comment. Are you team chosen solitude or team constant socializing? Let's talk about it. And if this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Peace.